Thanks everyone for joining today. We're really excited to talk more about the Colorado Forest Tracker and how this group of folks and others that you know can contribute to the project. So as Katie already said, I'm joined today by the rest of the core Forest Tracker team, including Brett Wolk, who is Assistant Director at the Colorado Forest Restoration Institute, Stephanie Mueller, a geospatial analyst with CFRI, and Rebecca Daniels, who is a GIS specialist with the Colorado State Forest Service. And my name is Nick Kotlinski, and I'm the Geospatial Data and Analysis Program Manager at the Colorado State Forest Service. So reviewing our schedule for this session, we're going to be providing an overview of the Forest Tracker with plenty of time for questions at the end of the presentation. And then we'll be moving into the data submission portion. So this is going to include a little more background on the data submission options that we've prepared as part of this project. And then we'll move into breakout rooms, and we'll talk more about those later. But that'll be an opportunity for everybody on the call to work with us directly, depending on what your data needs are. And we can just talk about it, or we can actually edit data live on the call, if that would be helpful. And then we'll reconvene for the last 10 minutes if necessary to just debrief and answer any closing questions before we get off the call. So I think next I'm going to hand it off to Brett to briefly give us an overview of why the Forest Tracker project is so important to us and a little more context about the history.
Thanks, Nick. Great to see everybody. Just to start, quick background on who CFRI is and why we're involved in this, partnering with the State Forest Service. CFRI, Colorado Forest Restoration Institute, was authorized in 2004 through the Act of Congress, and we have sister institutes in Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. Saw some folks from those other institutes on the call today, which is great. And our mission is we're really a boundary spanning organization located at universities to be close to science, but really to participate in developing science as well as applying science with partners in the field. They always have more questions than we can answer, so we go back to the science and generate new science or find out more answers, and really that go-between to develop actionable knowledge. So this project is a great example of spanning some of those boundaries and pulling multiple agencies and organizations and land ownerships together. Go ahead, Nick. So why are we doing a forest tracker at all? These forest processes are cross-boundary, including the ecological, social, economic, lots of factors go across the whole state and all land ownerships. And so there's a need, and we've heard a need from all of our partners to make these forest management activities more transparent. And our goal is to foster learning and improve forest management outcomes. That's why we're doing this and why we're invested in it. And the reason that we think this is going to help is because there's research, and as well as on-the-ground experience and feedback shows that more coordinated forest management efforts are more impactful. So the more transparent we can make the data, the better we're going to have the outcomes. Go ahead, Nick. This project really initiated around 2016 or 17, and CFRI first collected all lands fuels treatment data, and that started just along the Front Range. There was a huge demand for it, and then we were able to, again, sort of cross some boundaries and decided to make it statewide. We updated that in 2022, and that's the screenshot of the report you see there. This is a static product. It's not posted on a web map anywhere. We're happy to share the data, and still are right now if you email us, but it's not something that we had the capacity or felt was good to post and make accessible on a more readily available basis. And that led to lots of conversations, and really excited to partner with the State Forest Service to really take this to the next level and develop the Colorado Forest Tracker, which is sort of the next iteration of our fuels treatment database. Next, Nick. I also just want to clarify, CFRI is involved in a national project that is very similar to the Forest Tracker and called the Reshape Project. These have completely different funding sources. We're, overlapping, but different missions and objectives and audiences. And I think it was just good to clarify and bring this up that these projects are related. We are definitely learning from this national project that we're involved in and have been with our other two institutes in New Mexico and Arizona. But they're a separate project from this Colorado Forest Tracker. So just clarifying that we're learning from each other as we're developing both, but they are separate in many ways. Next one, I think. So our audience and applications for the Colorado Forest Tracker, we have heard this need from sort of top down, bottom up, all different levels of decision makers and people engaging through this Colorado Forest Collaboratives Network. Has many people in collaboratives and working as professional forest and fire managers have requested data like this. And then it has also been incubated and developed and much talked about with the Colorado Forest Health Council. I sit on the Colorado Forest Health Council. I'm not representing the council on this call, but again, the information and the ideas and a lot of that has been discussed, and the data is, the Forest Health Council is really eager to have this data to inform decisions about statewide programs and priorities. Research scientists, the different agencies have lots of initiatives and pressure to report outcomes on where forest management is happening. And there's lots of different kinds of reporting. So we're hoping this will create a lot of efficiencies for a lot of people in reporting outcomes. And I skipped over research scientists, but that has been a somewhat surprising, but somewhat not, incredibly high user of our previous statewide databases. It gets used by a lot of people in Colorado, and a lot of people outside Colorado have really leveraged that in unique ways. So a wide variety of audiences and applications that we expect for this Forest Tracker, and that's just scratching the surface of some of the people and motivations for this project. So with that, I think I'll pass it back to Nick to tell you more details of what is the tracker actually.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. So yeah, I think Brett just went over a lot of why we're doing this and who it's for. But what's kind of exciting about this project is that it's kind of a way for CFRI and CSFS to partner to really leverage our agency's unique expertise and also enhance the capacity to deliver this type of product on a consistent annual basis. So really what we're doing is updating this inventory to enhance CFRI's previous Colorado Interagency Fuels Treatment Database, and then make sure that it is publicly accessible on a number of platforms that we'll talk about in a second, not least of which would be the Colorado Forest Atlas that we manage and all of our web applications on there, and then just facilitate the use of the data for statewide reporting. So what's in the Forest Tracker? So this data set at a minimum will include completed management activities on natural and working lands. So this is intended to be a cross-boundary data set across ownership types, but will not include planned or in-progress activities. It'll also include woody vegetation management activities, including forest canopy, surface management, and reforestation. And then activities will be based on polygons submitted by agencies or individuals. And we're also asking for any distinctions between GIS data acreage and the actual acres of work completed on the ground by asking for acres managed. These may be the same in some cases, and in other cases, they're distinct values. For instance, if you're using a property boundary for your GIS data, but you know that the completed work was on a smaller scale. We're looking for year completed, including all activities available between January 1st of 2000 to September 30th of 2023, or the end of the current fiscal year. Not having data this far back in history does not mean that data can't be contributed. That's our time frame that we're looking for data. And then finally, the name of the agency that completed the treatment work, and funding source, if and when available. What we're not including. So currently, we are not looking to include non-woody vegetation management activities. We're not going to include planned or in progress activities. We certainly hope that the forest tracker can kind of be a critical piece for future planning needs. This data set's not going to include those for obvious reasons related to updating the data and things like that. This data set will not be continuously updated. So this newest iteration will be updated and released on an annual cycle currently. That might change into the future, but I just want to make it clear that this is not something that we will kind of continually real-time update as we get submissions. There will be a definite cycle to the data so that we have time to clean it and release it for use. This project is going to publish only detailed spatial data, and by detailed, I mean including polygons and not including point data. We can't accept point data at this time, but that's why we're going to offer some options for how to contribute if you only have your data in point format. There are some ways that we can help you create polygons for completed activities so that you could contribute data if you have all the other pieces that we're asking for. So trying to make it a little easier, but just making that clear. We're also not collecting data on individual tree management activities.
I guess I'll just jump in. We're expecting lots of questions about, do you take this? Do you take that? Should I submit this? And that's great. That's the purpose of this webinar. Defensible space activities, if it involves, right, should you submit the data? If it involves active, woody vegetation management of basically cutting or rearranging or burning of woody vegetation, including trees and shrubs, or reforestation and planting trees, then yes, is it, like Nick said, is it mapped with the associated data that is needed to be a part of it? Then yes, please submit it, right? If it's changing a roof or doing other things to a house, or, we said we're not really targeting right now community or urban forestry of individual management of trees on tree islands in the middle of roads. Those are really important, but that's not the focus right now. So we encourage you to put other examples in the chat if you have other questions of, should I include this or that? I think our overall philosophy was to kind of start targeted, and we could always increase it, the scope of the data later, but including things like herbaceous vegetation management, noxious weed spraying, grazing, super important for our forests and forest ecology and fire ecology. But I think what we're trying to do is create a layer that is really useful and clear about forest management activities across Colorado. So that's our intent. Add examples to the chat, ask us questions, please.
So I just wanted to give a simple timeline of this project, kind of past the CFRI history. So we've requested data submissions from partners already through some emails and hopefully through this webinar. And that started in October, and that will be going through November 10th of 2023 is when data submissions will close. We're then going to spend the winter cleaning the data for release and also creating all the deliverables and products for public release that we hope to have available sometime in spring of 2024. And then based on our current cycle, we plan to do all of this again next fall, hopefully having learned a lot and, new ideas in the works for new products or new ways we can collect data. So looking to the future, after we get all this data, what are some products that we plan on releasing along with the core data set? And by the way, all of this data that you'll all be contributing, hopefully. So first of all the synthesized data is going to be open access and available as feature services through the Colorado State Forest Service's ArcGIS Online data portal. And so you can integrate those feature services into your own GIS or online web maps, however you'd like. And we'll also have it available as a downloadable geodatabase through the Colorado Forest Atlas. We also plan on creating a public Esri dashboard to visualize the data and provide a lot of summary statistics and search and filter functionality so that folks can, maybe that don't have GIS experience or a GIS support staff, can actually use that dashboard to investigate the data and use it for planning. We're also excited to be able to incorporate forest tracker data into the existing Colorado Forest Atlas applications. And so in that way, you can use our platforms to visualize the data along with all the other data that we provide, including wildfire risk layers, forest and watershed health, and other forestry layers that you could find on the Atlas. And then finally, CFRI will be leading the reporting of forest tracker summary statistics, as well as doing some analysis using remote sensing and looking at interactions between forest management and wildfires and other disturbances. And if Brett wants to give any more details on that, he's welcome to, but I think a lot of this is TBD.
I think I will say we have lots of plans. Our goal right now is just to get the data organized and available as fast as possible to the state of Colorado. And then analysis will sort of dovetail along with that.
Mm-hmm. So I did want to highlight similar projects that have received some attention recently to kind of show the potential of the forest tracker for Colorado. California recently released their beta Esri dashboard for their interagency treatment data. This is very much what our team envisioned, and we'll be working hard once we have the data synthesized to put as much of this functionality into the forest tracker dashboard as we can and make it really distinct for Colorado's needs. And obviously there'll be some differences in the schema and structure of the data we're going to collect, but really looking to make usable applications so people can look through this data. I do want to note that the California data right now is based on a lot of required data submissions throughout the state, data that they have easy access to, while Colorado currently is a little more reliant on some voluntary submissions. So it's really going to take your support and data submissions to create a similar project for Colorado and make all these awesome products that we're envisioning. To kind of make those a reality, we need to make sure that we have as much data as possible and as complete a data as possible. So getting into the actual data and the schema that we have laid out for this project, we've compiled a full attribute table of required and optional fields, and all of this is available on the concept paper and data submission guidance documentation on our website, and I'll have lots of website links coming up. But we've tried to keep it really simple while providing enough detail to make the data useful across a range of needs. The required fields are kind of the minimum amount of detail that we need in order for any contributions to be included in the final data set. And these were decided upon by CFRI and CSFS as we were putting this project together. Again, these may change in the future, but for now, this is what we're looking for. So required fields include agency, which this is the agency that completed the work on the ground. We also have management type, which includes the treatment methods below, so canopy surface and reforestation. And then depending on which one you choose, you would include a more detailed management method from the list on the right. And then we're also looking for the year the treatment was completed, as well as those managed acres that may or may not be the same as the footprint of the data. And so management methods, including all these choices on the right, we've collapsed more kind of detailed silvicultural methods into these simple terms. So please do review the documentation when you're formatting your data. And I'll go over that in just a second, a little bit. But please do just read the concept paper. In most cases, we've kind of outlined maybe how more complex methods should be collapsed into these. Let's see. Oh, I do want to note, so that bullet at the top. So each management activity that we're looking for should be submitted as a single record. We know that some groups or entities record activities or projects for each property and then might list multiple treatment methods within a property. For this database, we are asking for those treatments to be broken out into individual records. So you may have overlapping polygons where different treatment activities were completed. So you might have a canopy and a surface management activity in the same location, and we will account for that overlap later, but this will help us get a more accurate accounting of managed acres later on, instead of kind of double counting certain activities because of the footprint of the data. So I wanted to show an example of kind of of 3 activities and how our schema looks when you're looking at this in ArcGIS Pro attribute table. So since we're asking for a single management type for each activity, we should have null values for the columns where we selected more detailed activity types. So what we're looking at now is missing a little bit of context. So we may be looking at 3 distinct treatment locations, or we might be looking at 3 treatments that occurred at a single location. I did just want to kind of show how it would look. And as you're sending us data, we do have this overall management type column. And then depending on what you choose, you would fill out the column associated with whatever it says in management type. And we'll look more later about how these work. And we have drop downs built into the domains so that you can easily select the correct information we're looking for. Again, if you have more questions about the management types that we've chosen to include in the Forest Tracker, please look at the Forest Tracker website, read the concept paper, or the data submission guide also has the tables of attributes and all the descriptions of the designations. So, certainly give us feedback on these and read up on them and let us know how things are looking. So yeah, these are the documents that in the website. So we do have a dedicated website through the CSFS. And there you can find a link to the concept paper, as well as an informational one-pager, and then a link to the data submission guide, which is where you'll find links to the different forms that we're going to talk about in just a second, as well as links to our Geodatabase template that you can use to tie your data to our Forest Tracker template. And so, yeah, please do visit the website and take a look. And with that, I think we'll open it up to questions before we move on to the data submission portion.
So I think any questions on the framework, why we're doing the Forest Tracker, generally what goes in, and then Nick and others will spend a little bit of time going through the data submission options, and then we'll do breakout rooms. But there'll be more time for more questions at the end, is what I was saying, and more information on data. Any questions on general, what are we doing and why?
And just as a reminder, you can either put those in the chat or raise your hand or just unmute, since we don't seem to have people fighting over it.
Well, I can move on if there's no other questions.
We did just get one in the chat. was grazing included? That's a maybe. Does somebody have an answer to whether grazing is
sorry.
included?
I think uh, generally no. If you can, it's really hard, I think, with most grazing data to parse out. There is sort of grazing in Colorado on oak or other woody vegetation that is very targeted on the woody vegetation. If you can sort some of that out, we'd be happy to have it. But I think general agricultural grazing or forest grazing that is really targeted at herbaceous vegetation is not included at this time. We're focusing on woody vegetation and forest management.
Another question, are you only looking for information from the actual land manager, or should nonprofits performing work also submit data?
Love this question. Anybody who is doing anything regarding forest management in Colorado, let's have it. Yes, everyone is included. Everyone is part of forest management. So absolutely, this is not a successful project if it's only the land management agencies, and we have access to a lot of the federal land management agency data is publicly available already, and we're working directly with them. We really need, and everyone to make this successful needs nonprofits, counties, private landowners, all kinds of different data submitted across all land ownerships. Thanks, Amy.
I have a question myself. I had heard at some point that there can be like maybe privacy issues with private land. Do you know what the status of that is?
So in general, there aren't privacy issues with private land. It depends on what funding sources you're using on private land. And so like a lot of the state Forest Service data is funded through state grant programs that is publicly available data now. Where that comes up most often is with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, the NRCS, and some of their specific programs have privacy requirements built within them. We are in contact with the NRCS state forester and state office, as well as conservation districts, trying to work through that and have been for many months, and are hopeful we'll be able to get some of that data, but that is still a work in progress. They are hopeful to be able to contribute and are trying their best to work through their requirements.
I'm not seeing any other questions coming through the chat.
Well, I'll move on, and then if folks have questions before we move to breakout rooms, you're welcome to bring them up. As I've already kind of mentioned, and we've outlined in a lot of our email communication, we're asking for current contributions to be submitted by November 10th of this year. And again, we're encouraging partners to submit activity data collected between January 1st of 2000 through September 30th of 2023, which is the end of the federal fiscal year, as long as your data meets our minimum requirements. If you don't have records that go that far back, no worries. We'll take whatever you have available and is complete. Brett mentioned this, but federal data is being collected from those agencies. Both were publicly available and through some targeted requests that we're currently working through. But if you do know of any data that might be missing from the public record, I don't know if there's any federal folks here, please let us know how we can acquire that and work through that process. This is a screenshot on this page of our forest tracker data submission instructions that Rebecca Daniels has put together. And so that when you go to the website and you say submit data, this is where it'll take you. And we're about to get into why it takes you to this semi-lengthy instructional document as opposed to a single form. So this nice flowchart was also created by Rebecca and put together so that you can choose the best option when submitting data. And I'm going to be perfectly honest here. We may have overthought all of this just a little bit, but our intention was to really consider a broad range of GIS expertise as well as the potential state of people's data. So our intention here is to be inclusive and save everyone, including ourselves, a bit of time in data formatting, and the need to kind of do a ton of follow-up about your data and what it means and how we should translate it, as opposed to maybe you translating it based on your best understanding of it. Not that we don't want to talk about your data, we do, and that's going to be one of the options. But anyway, that's the reason for this complex process. So the first option is option A. And so this is if you have spatial project data, you have some GIS support, and you are able to format your data using our forest tracker data template. So this option puts a lot of work on data contributors up front, but again, the intention is to make sure that partners with a large amount of data can reformat it to match our template in a way that's easy, that should be easy for GIS professionals to accomplish. And that saves our team a lot of time on the back end doing a lot of cleaning and then asking follow-up questions about maybe treatment methods and how they fit into our schema. You know your data best, and so we're really asking you to take the time to reformat it and match it up as best you can, and then submit it to us. And so that's what option A is really for. So this is a multi-step process, and it includes at least 6 steps. The first is reading the data submission guide to make sure you understand everything that we're asking for. Reviewing your data for the minimum requirements, organizing your data wherever possible. So this might include breaking out, like I said earlier, multiple treatment types for a single location, or maybe merging individual polygons together to make a single database that you can then reformat. The biggest steps are appending your data to the Forest Tracker database template, which is available in our submission guide, and has been formatted to basically make the next step a lot easier for everyone. And so at this point, your columns don't need to be correctly named. You just need to know which columns kind of can go into what we're asking for as a minimum requirement. But then after you've appended everything, you would then go through and clean your data using the provided domain dropdown lists. And this is where you'd probably spend the most time converting your fields to match the forest tracker. And then after you're all done with this, you would go to the Google form that we have a link to, and you would say, I've done everything, and I want to submit this data and upload a zipped geodatabase or shapefile. It doesn't matter to us. And submit that to us. So this isn't necessarily just, it's not for non-GIS users. We've provided a lot of step-by-step instructions to encourage the use of this method. Again, so you can save a lot of time going through it. Please pass this guide to your GIS person or your data people if you have them to help you submit this. This is by no means the only way you could reformat your data in GIS to contribute to the forest tracker requirements, but we just wanted to provide one solution that we thought was fairly easy for people to follow. And so that's the complex method, but assuming you have people on staff or you yourself could follow these guidelines. The next option is if you don't have spatial data or you don't have polygon data for your activities, but you have fewer than, we're saying, about 10 activities, you would use option B. And so that's a Survey 123 form that allows the submission of a single activity at a time. And that includes the process of drawing a spatial data on the map. And multiple activities can be submitted by a single person or a group of people by just doing the form again. But the reason we're saying we don't recommend this for over 10 records is just because it can be time consuming. But assuming this is the easiest way for you to do it. It goes pretty fast. It's all a bunch of drop down selections. It can go pretty fast. So Again, the form includes questions for all forest tracker attributes, but only requires entry of the required fields. And then you'll have to draw a polygon by hand on a web map. Optional fields are encouraged, but shouldn't deter you from submitting this type of data. If you have individual polygons for an activity, you can upload it through this form, but we ask that you still draw a rough boundary of a polygon because it is a required part of the submission process, but you are welcome to upload data if you do have a single polygon. This method is being offered because it allows us to manage a feature service on the back end, and it helps us kind of scoop up a bunch of potential individual activity records that might be out there that we might miss because they're not incorporated into larger spatial data sets. So I think this is probably the most user-friendly method, but it might not be the right method for everybody. And then, oh, here we go. Sorry, I should have gone here. This is just some screenshots of the actual submission, the Survey 123 submission form, and then the little map where you would draw your polygon or upload files. Again, this is just for a single activity. The last option is option C. We don't talk about option C a lot, but we still want to highlight it here because we are committed to trying to work with everybody to get as many types of data or whatever data people are able to contribute. So this option is for anyone who can't reformat or contribute their data as outlined in option A, or maybe has too many records to digitize to use option B efficiently. So we're encouraging people to still submit their data or request more in-depth support through this option C. And all option C is going to the Google submission form where you would submit option A data. And instead of saying, yes, I completed all the specifications outlined in the instructions, you would say, no, I did not, but I still want to try and make this work. So at that point, you can select no. You can still attach any sort of data you might still have, like a zip shapefile or geodatabase, but that's not necessary for this step. You'll then be prompted to answer some more questions to explain to us why you weren't able to complete the other steps or what other support you might need to kind of finalize your data. And someone from the Forest Tracker team, probably Rebecca or Stephanie, will reach out to you to follow up and make sure that we can get that data from you. So, you know, those are the three options that we have, and hopefully one of those works for you to contribute. So, for the rest of the time, really, we want to be able to, I guess, talk to everybody that's here that wants to submit data. So we're going to have breakout rooms that focus on, I think Brett is going to talk more about the Forest Tracker applications and outcome measures and just kind of maybe some philosophical questions about the Forest Tracker. Room 2 will be Rebecca going over option A. So I guess maybe demoing how to append GIS data and just showing off kind of how the template works and going through that process. Room 3 will be Stephanie highlighting option B and going over the Survey 123 form. And then I'll be in room 4 going over option C, but please, if you just need general data support or have general questions, you're welcome to join my room as well. And yeah. I don't know, Katie, once we do the breakout rooms, I think for the last 10 minutes, we will reconvene in the main room just to go over any parting questions.
Yep, that sounds good. Before I open up the breakout rooms, we have one question in the chat, which is, what is the best way to incentivize people to take the time to submit? Is there a spiel that speaks to the value of making the Forest Tracker comprehensive? Or what about watersheds or counties who have complete data submitted? Will they get some sort of reward? Data submission tasks are often lower on the priority list for some people. So can you articulate an incentive, etc.?
I see Nick muted himself and Rebecca turned the camera off, so I'll take this one. Yeah, Paul, I think, I tried to lay some of that out in the intro, but, there has been an overwhelming amount of desire and request for this from people on the ground, from state level leaders, right? And I tried to articulate that in the beginning. And so if you think this is important and would be helpful for forest management in Colorado, then that's why we're trying to encourage everyone else, encourage your partners to like, hey, this is worth your time. Because if you do this, there's going to be huge benefits for everyone to have transparency of complete data across the state, right? And if, it might happen that many people submit data this year, and then some people don't, and we keep working on it, and it's an iterative process to say, hey, everyone else's data is in here, we have this gap, and so, what are we doing? Is there any activity going over here? Can we take credit, or can we recognize your accomplishments that are happening over here? You better put some stuff in the database, because this is sort of a, with the State Forest Service, we're trying to, it's not an official sort of record, but we're trying to make one place where everyone can go to get what's happening in Colorado's forests of, again, vegetation cutting, burning, removal, as well as reforestation. Is really important and really scattered, hard to find that data, putting that in one place where we're losing trees and we're growing trees, right? That would be great. So I don't know, we're open to suggestions if you have others. I think the need has been expressed and we're trying to meet that need. And the more that you can help us share that message is welcome.
I'm in. But I'm really excited about this project, and I'm obviously interested as the WRC and our roles might be able to support this and reach out to additional agencies and land managers to see if we can get the word out to get as many, as much data in as possible. So that's something I'll share with the WRCs as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And for the others, I think you're familiar. WRC is Wildfire Resilience Coordinator, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, has there been any communications like across all state Forest Service yet of like just announcing that it's happening, encouraging all the field offices and people to talk with all of the partners?
I can't say I've seen anything cross my path specifically, but I also may not have recognized the force tracker for the system that it was. So it may have gone under my radar, not being familiar with the term force tracker until today and understanding some of the concepts behind it. I could see an email like that coming into my periphery and me assuming it was probably outside of my area of needing to know. So I can't confirm with that for sure, but I know that I'll be, working on my end to try to share this information with my area's supervisory foresters and as many people as I can, just in case.
Great. Yeah, I think that would be important. And however we can help with that, let us know.
I missed the beginning because I'm doing home assessments. But we have no GIS capability at Estes Valley Fire right now. So I'm really trying to get them on board into this century or last century. So I'm looking for ways to track our mitigation work, big and small. So that's the reason why I was interested in this. I was curious if we could use this for larger landscape projects like McGregor Ranch, 400 acres, and Thunder Mountain's going to be 250 acres. Could this be a tool that we could use?
Yeah, definitely. McGregor Ranch and those kind of properties should definitely be in there, and all the forest management that's gone on. We did towards the end, and happy to go over it again. We have a form if you don't have existing GIS, but you know where projects have happened. We have a form where you can add the attributes of what year it happened and things like that, and then just have the imagery up and draw on a map. Just do a couple clicks, and submit some data that way. So, yeah, hopefully, I think that's a thing, and I didn't really emphasize this in the big room, but it's pretty easy to get in touch with county open spaces, city open spaces, a lot of municipal governments, a lot of people, conservation districts. There's fewer numbers of those, and they're more easier to get in contact with. Fire protection districts do a lot of forest management activities, but there's a heck of a lot of fire protection districts across the state. And so how we reach them, I would be happy to, have suggestions and help putting this on the radar, realizing that there's a lot. They also often have variable, some have really great GIS capabilities, and some are more, it sounds like you, Wesley, with very little to no GIS capabilities. So yeah, any help or suggestions on connecting with that demographic would be great.
Yeah, there's so many projects going on in the Estes Valley, and it's hard to keep track of them all.
Yeah.
The county's doing work, the watersheds are doing work, we're doing work, private ranches are doing their own work, the park's doing work, the Forest Service is doing work. We really need a central database where we can look at what all the projects are, so we're not duplicating, where we can build on. And that's kind of, as a new person here, only here 6 months, I'm trying to figure that out. I really have no place to look and see what's really been going on. The park's pretty good. I will give the park kudos. They sent me all their GIS data, all their mapping. So it was very cool to see that. But everything else, it's up in the air.
And Brett, so being in the Northeast area, I'm curious about how some of these methods might work in our grassland communities. So wood treatment methods that are more specific for grassland areas. So I know grazing isn't going to be included. I definitely understand the challenges behind that. And mowing, I'm assuming, would kind of fall under the same type of context. So do you know how this platform might be able to capture treatment methods that are not in forested communities, but are more in the Front Range grassland areas?
Yeah, I think right now we took the tack, like I said, of focusing on forest management activities and really on the woody vegetation. So, and I am more guilty of this than a lot of people, of thinking of forest management activities as being synonymous with fire management activities. But there's a lot of reasons that we manage forests other than fire, and similar with grasslands, right? So I think really reframing it for me is like, how are we managing our forests in all the different ways, right? Of tree removal, rearrangement, as well as tree planting, is the bigger picture of what we're going for. And so right this year, we also were like, let's see how much data we get and make sure we can handle it before we ask for everything. And I wouldn't rule that out in the future at all. The California dashboard, if you've looked at that, that does include grazing, agriculture. They have like 60 management activities or something. Any kind of natural resource management activity, much more broadly. I think, in a lot of ways that's good. In a lot of ways, that also makes it really hard to sort through the data and get the information that you want. And so I think our experience with other databases was some of the overwhelming people with data. We were trying to be a little more targeted and say, here's a resource, right, that is useful for not just fire management, but lots of other things as well. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe we'll get to California someday and be like a comprehensive natural resource management. That also might be, I don't know, I haven't heard one way or the other, but is that something that is hosted at the State Forest Service, or is that a different organization that might, be better suited to host that?
Yeah, definitely all good questions and lots of things to consider, and lots of time for us to wait and see how other things unfold.
Yeah, but
Right.
I think it is important, and I hope that you and others keep encouraging people, because there is a mindset, and we get that question all the time of why aren't you doing grazing, or why aren't you doing mowing or anything else, that it's a targeted thing to make it useful for forest management, but that doesn't mean that those other things aren't important to forest ecology and fire management. Like, it's critical. And I'm really kind of, I don't know if nervous is the right word, but really conscious of trying to make that a clear message.
Yeah.
Right. That all that matters. There are questions in the chat about, home hardening and things like that, like super important activity to do. Not tracking that in this database.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good to know about its limitations, and also, where it might go. So good to know.
Yeah. Who knows where it'll go. Hi, Danny. Good. Thanks for joining us. And I saw Daryl Gardner in there. Well, I don't know if you or Julia or anyone else has something you want to share, or questions, or.
Hello. Sorry, I don't have any questions. I was in another breakout room and we kind of finished up in there, and just wanted to pop in here and see what's going on.
Yeah, I guess it'd be good. What's your role? What's your profession?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a new GIS specialist for the West Region Wildfire Council, the Western Slope here, and I'm just attending this meeting to learn more about this program and see how can we contribute to this great effort. So looks pretty straightforward, and be talking with my organization and seeing what we can do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great to meet you. I knew they hired someone, but now I get to meet you.
Yeah.
So we
Yes, nice to meet you.
Yeah, one thing that we were just talking about, and I actually emailed Lee Robertson and Jamie, is asking for help spreading the word and encouraging partners to submit data, and sort of using your network, in particular some of the fire protection districts and some of those other folks, to kind of get this on the radar and help. If there's any way that you could, like, hey, maybe, I don't want to volunteer you to be their GIS support, but like whatever you can do to say, hey, this isn't a huge lift, and State Forest Service and CFRI will help you, or something like that, Awesome.
That sounds like a good potential. Yeah, that would make sense. Communicating with those partners that may or may not be aware of this program, and good news.
Good way for you to go meet everyone real quick.
Yes, I have to do a lot of that, so might be good.
Anything else, Daryl or Julie, you want to introduce yourselves, or it's fine if you're just listening, that's okay too.
Yeah, hey everyone. I work for the Mountain Studies Institute down in Southwest Colorado, and I'm super excited about this tool because I often find myself trying to wrangle spatial data from partners for mapping and planning purposes, and it is quite the task. So I think that having tools like this is a great way to just streamline those efforts, because I know that lots of other collaboratives and groups around are always trying to wrangle spatial data, and we always just try and reduce like how many times we're asking people from different angles for their shape files. So yeah, I'm really excited about this, and also somewhat interested in how this might dovetail with similar efforts happening in New Mexico. They have a sort of similar platform that has been launched, but I haven't really used it as much. But we work across the state line, so it's really helpful to have similar data on kind of both sides.
Yeah, the New Mexico, the vegetation treatment database, I think that's probably what you're referencing. And that is actually developed and managed by the New Mexico Forest and Watershed Restoration Institute, which is our sister institute in New Mexico. I mentioned we have, CFRI in Colorado, there's the New Mexico Institute, and then one in Arizona. And so some of what we've learned and how we're developing the forest tracker is informed by their efforts. And we definitely are, in communication with them. I think our effort is really closely paired again with the State Forest Service. It's a little more narrow and more targeted on forest vegetation. Their database does include a much wider range of sort of natural resource management actions. So they have slightly different audiences and purposes. And it's not going to be a one-to-one. It will sort of like kind of stop at the state line and be somewhat different, but hopefully both useful. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question or helps clarify, but
Yeah, totally. I think, once both of these tools are up and running, maybe momentum will build with both of them.
Yeah, and the vegetation treatment database has been up for several years now. So they're up, they're live, there's data, you can download it, all that kind of stuff. I know they run into similar issues of data completeness and getting people to contribute data. And so we're trying to learn from that, work more from, again, bottom up as well as state level down, and do everything we can to have people do it. But I think having people like you, Julia, kind of, even if you don't have a lot of data on your computer or at Mountain Studies Institute, spreading the message and sharing it through the collaborative groups that you're a part of would be really useful for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. Just having one place to go and put your data, that's an easy message for us to share. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome. I guess I'm curious what kind of analyses or extra information, once we have the data, like shoot for the moon and could you do this? Or I would really love to know this once we have all of the polygons about what happened everywhere. Or how you would like it seen used by, state level leaders once we have this picture of where forest management is happening and where forest management is not happening across the whole state. If there's any thoughts percolating in your mind of research questions or applications for sort of statewide or regional programs.
Oh yeah, I can chime in on that one. Sorry, again, really excited about this. So again, having, the wildfire component for me for my position, I'm really interested to see as we start to get more of this data in, and then as we do a new update for the CORA data, I'm really excited to see how those layers play out as far as when we start to see fuel treatments that are being done, and then we start to see changes in risk areas and, and how we're seeing some of the fuels modeling come out. So I'm not sure if that's something that is just going to have to be, visualized and pulled together as organically as it all starts to come out, or, once we're ready for the co-remodeling, I'll be curious to see if we'll start to devise maybe new models and new data sets to pull that information together to even create new layers that can compare it. And then, to add on to that, I'll also be curious to see how this will play out as far as the private lands, without getting that data in, we might really start to see also some really impactful information from private lands as far as what is and is not happening and how those areas can be better targeted. So yeah, I think that, I know everyone's clamoring for this kind of an application, and I think it's going to have potentially far-reaching impacts that usually I'm not interested in having time speed up, but in this case, it's going to be really hard to hold the reins back and not be too excited to see, what outcomes might come from this.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I definitely thinking about sort of risk assessments and prioritizations, and thinking about that and how it is management activity lining up. I think the other, interesting thing is how this is going to line up with wildfire footprints and future wildfires. And maybe, do we need, how much management are we doing, sort of intentional active management, which this database is tracking, versus the wildfire footprints that are out there, and sort of how are those interacting or lining up?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and also just comparing different types of treatments in areas as well, and seeing what might be more successful based off of desired outcomes, and then incorporating that, possibly, using that as a litmus test for some more private lands restoration and land management as well. That I think is kind of that missing piece, especially in Colorado, with there being so much private land. That I think it's like 61% roughly of the state is private. So that's a huge area that is not really going to be addressed. But this, I think, might help really provide some of the needed guidance for beginning that process.
Yeah, and I mean, the State Forest Service, right, has a ton of data on private lands. They work primarily on private lands. They do a lot of stuff on state lands as well, but lots of private lands management. And then the NRCS is always the most complicated to get data from. And I'm more encouraged than I've ever been, and I've been doing this for quite a while, that there's hope that we'll be able to make use of their data. They're really trying to make it work, and I think I'm hopeful that something will come out where they can contribute. They really want to, and realize the importance of it. And I think it'll be important to show on the maps and the outcome metrics and all that kind of stuff, that contribution.
Yeah, fingers crossed on there. And it'll be interesting to see how it does play out, what the end result will be as far as that private information, and how they go about moving forward, so that way it doesn't pose any issues. But I think we're, gonna have to get there.
Yeah, even in creating this project, the last couple of years, as we've done our all lands treatment databases, was the previous iteration. Just having that conversation with the NRCS, they've started to change how they're writing their contracts and how they're administering grants a year ago, to try and make data from here into the future more available. So even just the concept and floating that out, I've seen some impacts and changes, which is encouraging, and sort of encouraging and terrifying to see, like you said, once this is out, what the other cascading implications are that we haven't even considered yet. But hopefully, all good. So
there's always going to be the good and the bad, so might as well just anticipate both.
Thank you for joining the option A breakout room. We're going to go through the options step by step using the data submission instructions guide. Following that, first I want to, let's take a look. Review to make sure that we are in the correct room. So, well, let me take a step back. My name is Rebecca Daniels. I'm a Colorado State Forest Service GIS specialist, and I'm going to be working with your data to get it into the Forest Tracker database and for everyone to use. Okay, so just one moment. Okay, so first let's make sure we are in the correct room. So option A has two main distinctions. We need to make sure that we have digitized spatial information. So does your treatment data have polygons associated with it? If so, let's go to the second. The second main distinguishing factor is the level of GIS experience that you have, or your organization has a GIS department or a professional that can help. If both of those are true, then this is the correct option that we want to keep going. The second thing before we dive into the actual data submission process is to make sure that we have the minimum data requirements. So we really want to get as much information as we can and have that available to everyone. But if there isn't a core set of attributes, it's less helpful. So we have whittled it down to what we think is absolutely core that we need. So agency, funding source, management type, the activity type, year completed, and managed acres. So this needs to be present in your data. If not, there are some ways that we can work around it, but it is less useful. For example, data that we're asking for data all the way back to the year 2000, and it's very likely that data even 10 years ago has some pretty good holes in it. So we will account for that when we get there, but any kind of new data or going forward, these should be your main data categories. So as we go through this, so I'm having trouble actually finding my chat in the, in the data breakout room, in this breakout room. So I'm going to ask you to please refer back to the Forest Tracker website that Katie put in the chat. This website will have all the links that you need for further instructions. A great place to start is the data submission instructions. From there, all other, the template, the Google form, other places that you'll need to go will be linked. So first, we recommend reading data submission instructions. Then we're going to review for the minimum requirements, which is what we just talked about there. Organize, we're going to do that together. Append, we're going to do that together. Clean up, which may take a little while, so I'll show you a little bit of what we mean. And then we're going to submit using the data form. Okay, we will come back to that in just one moment. Okay. So we are hoping that you all can help us format some of this data. We're anticipating getting large amounts of data, and most of our data people don't have a very strong forestry background. So to get this data properly categorized in the management type or the activity type, we are relying a lot on your help doing that. This, as you can see, is our Forest Tracker template. So the template download is linked from the website. I'll give you a little view of that. Here's our website. And if you scroll down, we have info sheet, concept paper, and then here are the data submission instructions. So if you click that, that will take you to the instructions. And then from there, these will go step by step. So here's your template, and that will be linked in a zipped geodatabase that you can download. Once you download and you put it in, it will look like this. So it is an empty geodatabase that is formatted with columns for you to populate. Then what you want to do is, and we're going to follow, I'll show you here. We've got our data submission instructions. So we're just going to go step by step through this. So here is our Forest Tracker template file geodatabase. And here is the table. This represents the more simplified minimum data requirements that we just discussed. And these are the activities. We can get into that. And then this will discuss further append. So first, what we want to do is we want to look at our data. So the data that you would like to submit. So here is an example of data that we have pulled primarily from federal SMART data from our own organization. So from the Colorado State Forest Service, spanning back several years. And as you can see, the column headings do not necessarily match what we're looking for, and there is more data than also what we're looking for. So this is a forest tracker data crosswalk table that I made that can be a helpful way to pair your data columns. So here in the leftmost column, I have the forest tracker template. As you can see, this corresponds to project name, agency, sorry, I pulled that off the screen a little bit, agency code. So I have this all listed where in the template, it is the column, here it is in the row. So then I have my own data, and the names of the columns are not as relevant as what we need. We need the information inside. So we are going to crosswalk it and pin it to the columns that we have. So as we look along for project name, which is the forest tracker template, I'm going to look on my data, and I have a category called, well, there we go, name, right here. So I'm going to say, yep, that corresponds to project name. Agency, in general, if it is within your own agency, that won't be a column, so we will populate that once we do the cleanup in a little bit. We're going to look, so I have, so for our funding source, I'm going to look through my columns, and I'm going to find, oh, I found a column called funding long name, and that's going to have the funding source. For management type, that can get trickier. It's a little bit, that's more complicated, and we will reformat that after the pen. We have the activity type, and then I have here activity practice, and that I'm going to send to all canopy, surface, and reforestation categories so that we can take a look at those one by one. So once you have done this, so take a look at your data. This is what we have to do in terms of, or what we recommend in terms of organizing your data. Take a look at it, match it to our data template headings, okay? Now, once you have gotten there, we are going to go to our template, and let's see, we're going to use the function append. So we go into tools, and this is outlined more in more detail in our data submission user guide right here. So our input data set is going to be your management data. So I'm going to drop down and I'm going to select the management data that I have for this demo. The target data set is going to be the template. So let's take a look at that. I have Forest Tracker template 2, demo 1. Okay, so for field matching type, now because our fields do not match exactly, we are going to choose the option that says use the field map to reconcile field differences. Now, the data submission instructions should hopefully help clarify some of this, but we'll do a couple of steps. There are also links to Esri tutorials. Many of us who are practiced, experienced GIS users have not had that much experience with geoprocessing in append, so that may be helpful. So you want to select the first category in the template. Then I'm going to put add source, and I'm going to select what it matches to in my data layer. So I'm going to select name. Add selected. And okay, so then for agency, let's see, funding long name, add selected. Management type. What do I have for that? So I'm going to refer back to my data crosswalk sheet. So for management type, I have activity type. Okay, and let's see, I'll do a couple more and then we will see. So for canopy management, surface management, and reforestation, I have all activity practice because it is one category in my data layer, but we have it split out in the template into 3 categories. So we are going to say canopy here, activity practice. I think that's what we have, right? Yes. All right, just want to make sure we're getting those in there. Activity practice, add selected, reforest, activity practice, add selected. Okay, so we're going to, and then I'm going to do one more with this year completed. In our template, I have, it corresponds to the end year in this. So let's look for end year, add selected. Okay, so I will quickly check that I have these categories that I want filled out here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run this. And we'll take a look at what results we have. Okay. So we have now essentially taken our data and plotted it onto the template. Before we get into the cleaning, there's some easier ones that we can do. So for example, agency, well, this is going to all be Colorado State Forest Service for, well, let's see, let's go into an edit session here. Okay. So I'm going to calculate field. Oh, I think I have it on the wrong. Okay, so I'm looking for agency because I know that at CSFS, this is harder for some of the collaboratives that have several different agencies. You may need to do this a bit more piecemeal. For if you're in a specific agency, you can just populate that all using calculate field. So here, as you can see, it's now been populated and that was a quick one. You can do the same thing with agency code. If you'll notice, funding source now has been crosswalked with the funding long name of my data management layer. In the data submission instructions, it talks a bit about these management types. Now, this is where it gets a little more complicated. So for the management type, you need to select either canopy, surface management, or reforestation. And we have a drop-down menu that is going to help with this. So, yeah, it's supposed to. Interesting. Oh, no. Well, let's see if we can figure out. Okay, there we go. Getting me worried there. Okay, so I think maybe I just didn't have an edit session on, or there was some kind of discrepancy there. So for the management type, this can be a bit tedious, but we are asking you to do this because I think it is better for somebody who knows their own data and understands the process to do this than for a GIS person who knows less about the data and less about forestry to do this. If you have any issues doing this, we can comment. There's going to be a notes column there, and that would be really helpful to take a look at. So we're asking you to select between canopy, surface, or reforestation. Null should only be selected as a last resort where it really can't be determined from the information. So for example, this would be a canopy management. Now within canopy management, because I selected canopy management, I have to go in and I'm going to look at the drop-down menu and I'm going to look at my description, fire reduction, and it's going to be a mechanical choice. So I will then select mechanical for the fuels reduction. Now, because I have canopy management, I'm going to go in and select null for the rest of the options here. Okay. And this needs to be done all the way through. So it can be a bit tedious. Hopefully your records are not quite as long. If they are prohibitively long, then send me an email and we can talk and we can figure out a better solution. We do really want your data and we don't want you to suffer for no reason. So if there is a way to work through this, that would be most helpful. Okay, so, and that is further outlined in the data submission. One thing to note here, for the year completed, there is a range domain. So it only accepts values between 2000 and 2023. So if I were to write 1999, it's gonna give me 2000. If I were to write 2024, it's gonna give me 2023. If I were to write 1800, it's gonna give me the closest number. So this is to help because often typos make it difficult for us to discern the information. So this will help usher in the correct information. So if your data comes in correctly, then it should not be a problem. If it comes in with a null, then if we can change it to what it should be, that is the hope process. So once this has been cleaned up, and please follow the data submission instructions for additional support, and do not hesitate to reach out to us and our GIS team. Outlined a bit here. I think the tricky part is certainly the drop-down menu. Here on step 8 of the data submission instructions, we discuss the columns or the attribute fields with domain constraints, what they are, and what we're asking you to put in. Outlined a little bit further here, which is the process that we just went. And again, we have the CSFS GIS team linked, and feel free to reach out to us. So hoping that all goes well, you are ready now to submit your data. So let's take a look at our data submission process. So we link to the data submission form. Now, one kind of unfortunate caveat about this data submission form is that it does require a Google, a Gmail account, so a Gmail email address. If you don't have one, again, please do email us. This is a way for Google to help ensure anytime you're uploading data, they want to have a little bit more security measures on there. So that is part of what they're going for here. So let's take this and all right, we're gonna fill this out together. So my name, I'm Rebecca Daniels. I'll put my email and Colorado State Forest Service. Okay, so here is the option. So if you start with the data submission form, you can This is our template geodatabase linked here, and these are the step-by-step data submission instructions. If you have gone through stuff in the order that we went through, you probably already have it. If not, you can start with this form, download these, and then come back to the form. Here we ask if the data is complete to all specifications. So were you able to fill out the template as hoped, as instructed? If not, say no and let us know why. So this is not yes is the only answer, yes is the only thing that we want data. So we want to know how we can help you and how we can, how we can provide support. Add your file here. Now, this is both for if the data is in the form that we hope it is, or if it's not in the form, the first question that we're going to ask is, hey, what does your data look like? Or send us your data. So this is a great way to start. So you want to zip your data, your geodatabase, and then submit it with add file, and go ahead and, well, it's not liking that there. Interesting. My computer has been acting up all morning.
Lost internet. We may have lost Rebecca for the time being. Did anybody on this in this group have any questions about what Rebecca's gone over? Do you need me to show data submission real quick?
No, I guess my question would be, is there a way for agency folks to look at the data so that they know they're not submitting data that's already in the database?
Yeah, so is that thinking about like maybe you received a grant from someone that you then had to report on, and the questioning whether whether they
Right.
already submitted it?
Right, exactly. I was just curious if that's been asked.
Yeah, no, we've thought about this, and right now we don't have a great solution for it. Hopefully the next cycle we will have a better kind of submission map where we can get some real-time updates. But right now we're kind of just hoping that everyone can submit what they have without assuming that anyone else will have it, because for Colorado State Forest Service moving forward, we will require oh, did I lose my internet too?
No, you're there. You're here.
Oh, it says I'm not, so hopefully I am for a while. Anyway, we will require certain grant funding to come with geospatial data, and in that case, we would submit it. So for furworm, a few other grants that we facilitate, we would have that spatial data, but we don't want to make any assumptions right now since we are just starting to roll out some of those requirements. So really, it's like, and we'll basically on the back end, we will do some of that data cleaning. So that there's not extra stuff, but hope like right now we're just trying to look for everyone to submit as much as possible, so that, and maybe next year we'll kind of learn that a lot of people submitted duplicate data or something like that. We kind of have no way to know right now.
Sounds good. Hi, Brett. I'm harassing Nick.
Well, my computer says I have
questions.
no internet. We lost Rebecca.
No, but it's a pretty cool feature. I mean, it's just a lot to ask people, to do the data joining. And do you have just a file you can say, dump us your data, like as a last, like to allow people just to send what they have if they don't have time to clean it up or join the tables,
Yeah. So where Rebecca was getting to, I think, before we lost her, was that the Google form So option C would be kind of your way to go. So you would just say no, that you haven't formatted everything, and that's fine. And then you can
Okay.
just upload your data, but that'll flag it on our end that we just need to investigate the data and reach out. And we're not opposed to reaching out. Like, this helps us build connections and understand the data. But so yeah, if and you know, I think I talked, like, Danny's on the call. You know, if it gets close to the deadline and you're like, man, I just, you know, I haven't been able to reformat this, or I don't think I have everything that I know that I could have, just please submit what you can, and we'll figure it out over the winter months and get it integrated.
That sounds great. Yeah, I'm with the New Mexico SWRI.
Okay.
And so we have, you know, the New Mexico, there's a version of it in New Mexico, and we developed an upload tool, which I think is similar to your Survey 123 feature, where it's just a one-off, drawing a polygon, entering the information. And, you know, we found we didn't get a lot of people, you know, submitting information that way. It was really just through email, like quarterly email requests, and then people sending attachments on email, you know, like that really. But New Mexico's a little behind I mean, we're not as spatially like connected as Colorado, you know, so I think you guys would have a better chance of finding those GIS professionals that can provide, you know, the time and the effort to do that.
That's our hope, and that's more coming from, again, the workload that CFRI has undertaken previously and trying to minimize some of that. And I love the New Mexico app, and I would love to connect, actually, and if I don't know if you developed it or who did, because there's some really great tools in there that I would love to replicate. And also hearing about, again, so I actually just looking at that this morning and was wondering if it was a single polygon drawing or if it was multiple polygon upload, because I know that's something I want to talk to Esri about, is why they make it so difficult to kind of be able to, like, if it's my database on the back end or my storage space, then why won't you allow me to let external partners upload data? So I don't know if you've tried to do that.
Well, you know, we built that tool, we contracted out the, you know, the design and build of it. And it's editing a feature service that's on like Amazon Web Services. And then, but it's limited to like one polygon, because you've got to add the attributes to that one polygon instead of saying I'm drawing 3 polygons with the same attributes, or, you know. So I think that's the holdup, is that you're trying to link the information. There should just be a next button, like, you know, like I've done that, let's go to the next polygon or something. But
Right.
yeah, I think,
Or
yeah,
a crosswalk, an internal crosswalk or something, and I don't
yeah,
know how we could build that out. Yeah, that's
yeah,
great.
yeah. But I'd be happy to reach out, you know, I can just provide my email or whatever, and we could have a longer discussion. We're not, yeah, we could just help, you know, just to bounce ideas off or whatever.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Hello, so my name is Stephanie Mueller. I am a spatial analyst with Colorado Forest Restoration Institute. Kind of worked on the first iteration of this, but glad to have CSFS joining us. So this option specifically, and I will try to share my screen here. So hopefully you see the little option A, option B that we just went over from the presentation. But specifically, this option is for agencies, maybe smaller agencies that have a smaller number of data or single projects they would like to submit and maybe don't have access to robust GIS, a specialist, or any options there. So option B. I kind of just have an example here. Say you just have one single treatment on the landscape. You want to submit that. You don't need to have polygons. I just kind of wanted to kind of quick example there. So to get to this, you'll go to the website and you'll click on this Forest Tracker submission instructions, which will bring you to this document. And here's a link here to your Survey 123 data submission form. And this method is very straightforward. Basically, it allows you to fill in all your fields. There are drop downs, so you can't get too lost or forget information. And the little asterisk here is going to show you required fields. Of course, we really would like any other information you can give in the non-required fields, but we understand older data or data maybe you didn't work on personally might not have some of this information. And there's just a lot more description here in what all these fields are if you get stuck at any point. But I think I can just kind of run through quickly how you would do this. But please let me know at any time if there's any questions or you need some clarification. So when you open this up, you would put your personal information here. This in no way will end up in the Forest Tracker publicly. This is just so that we can contact you if we have questions or issues with the data. But yeah, your name, your email won't end up in the public facing Forest Tracker. So say you have a project, you don't have spatial data for it, but it's pretty small and you think you know where it is on a map. You would just start here, you know, test name, give your project some sort of name or number. Once again, this isn't a required field, but it's always nice to have kind of an understanding of what the project is and can help fill in gaps sometimes. Second field, agency. This would be actually, you would write out the full name of your agency and then it's given a code here. I guess if you don't have a code, that's okay. We'll kind of make one up for you. This is kind of where options come in down here. Like I said, you can go to the concept paper or to the concept paper, kind of understand and pick which options you want. But say you did some sort of thinning, generally that's going to be a canopy management option. Once you select that, it's going to give you some different options. So if you do surface, it's going to give you a different option. If you do reforestation, it's going to give you different options. And these are very broad descriptions we have. Since we're trying to aggregate so much data, we want to keep it very broad. Don't freak out. There's options and note fields that you can add more information. But at this time, we don't want to necessarily go the Forest Service route and have the 80 options they have. We found it makes it hard to bring in private or, you know, data from smaller agencies and mash it with the federal data. It gets a little crazy. So these might not seem like everything you want. And maybe that will expand over time, but try to kind of use this concept paper to determine what these activities are. You know, thinning, if you're using equipment, is going to just be a mechanical method. So let's say we did a mechanical method. These three are all required. This year is the calendar year that it was completed, we're not looking for the fiscal, like the federal fiscal year or your fiscal year. We want to know just the year. It's really important as treatments change over time to really know when that date was. So we did a mechanical treatment in 2019. Nick kind of alluded to this in his talk, but acres managed. We know that a lot of agencies, even including Colorado State Forest Service, they focus on like parcels, and we'll call that their treatment area. But doesn't necessarily mean they treated the whole thing. So if you have a better idea of maybe, oh, we treated inside this parcel, we treated 20 acres of this parcel, that's kind of what this acres managed field is trying to capture. If you don't know that, the actual boundary is going to be the same as acres managed, but we'll calculate those acres. But if you have an idea that you might probably treat it less than that, it's really great to capture that here, so we really do understand what's happening on the landscape a little better. So these are probably going to be smaller projects in here. So maybe we did 20-acre treatment. Our funding source is a little broad. We're not maybe looking for the exact name of the grant, but we're trying to kind of get an idea of, was this funded by a grant? Is this a revenue generating activity? Was this some sort of private activity paid for? It doesn't have to be an agreement number and all that. We're just trying to get an idea of how treatments are being funded across the landscape. But really, you can put any amount of detail in there that you feel captures what you did. So maybe Acme Co-funded this one. The objective field was what I was kind of referencing before. So this is where you can really put as much or as little as you would like into here, but this is where you can capture that, you know, maybe you did that thinning treatment. Maybe you did a mechanical thinning treatment to create gaps and more open conditions. If you have all that information, you want to share that, that's great. If you really don't know and it's just thinning, we'd like to kind of see what people are doing and why they're doing it on the landscape. This is not a required field, especially for some of those older treatments. I know it can be really hard to figure out what happened. So we didn't make this required, but if you are interested in putting, we did it with chainsaws, we did it with forestry equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So there's just a lot of room here to put in some extra information that would be great to capture. If you don't know, it's an optional field, but we like to encourage you to use it, even if it's just mechanical thinning, patch cut. That'll be a good little sorting tool later on. There's kind of this other notes field as well. There's no real direction, just if there's some last thing you'd like to put in here, there's some options here for some extra notes. Feel free to use at your discretion. So this is where, if you didn't have a shapefile of any kind, you can actually go ahead and you can draw something. Ooh. Probably a little slow here. Let's get a road. So say you did a treatment somewhere in here, you can change these base maps too. If you would prefer to like look at streets, that might be more useful for you. But of course you can turn on imagery, some hybrid imagery, to help you better draw a polygon. It's really easy. All you're going to do is click this little freehand here, and you just kind of drag it. I don't know, maybe that's your treatment. And that was a pretty big treatment, turned out, really 20 acres of it, but that's really it. You can kind of edit and modify, or you didn't like that, you can start over. I think here you can just like make a square. So this is kind of just a freehand draw. I kind of know where my stuff is. I kind of know how many acres it is. Pretty easy. So then you would just go ahead and submit this, and it's going to pop out like a shapefile for us in the back end so that we can just pop that right into our database. And kind of the idea behind this one is, so you did one, you could submit it. And then that submitted it, you can go submit your next one. But like Nick said, this is for one single treatment at a time. If you did, like here, have this one single, so I have this happy polygon, you can submit a single polygon. So this is literally has one attribute in it. If you've ever used GIS, it's really slow when we're on Zoom. It doesn't matter what's in here at all. So if someone gave you data and you wanted to just push it, you really don't even really need to go into GIS to push it to us. But say you just happen to have this one single one, you can zip up your file, as can be here, and submit that. Now, kind of the funny thing when we made this, because this is a requirement, even if you submit a file, unfortunately, it's going to make you draw a little something. Otherwise, it won't submit. So this will be ignored. It's kind of a fluke of using this form. So you have to kind of put a fake little something in there in order for it to allow you to submit this zip file. And yeah, so you can only submit one at a time. You would still, even if you submit, you still need to fill out all of this stuff. So that's why it doesn't matter what's in your actual attribute table in GIS. So pretty straightforward method, pretty easy, a bit time consuming if you really did have a lot that you wanted to draw. In that case, it might be worth reaching out to us to get some more straightforward GIS help. But if you have a little technician or something needs to fill some time, this is definitely a very easy way that I think most people would be able to submit data. Yeah, please let me know if you have any questions about this.
I just have I guess a question and a note. One is the funding source. So it's okay to use acronyms for the funding source. Do you recommend acronyms over writing it out, or does it not matter?
It is a good question. I think for very popular grants, like FRRT, things like that, that would be totally acceptable to just go ahead and use that acronym because it's well understood. Yeah, that's what we're trying to define a little better. So we'll kind of have to see what people submit. But I would say yes, I would go ahead, especially some of those are very long. So
yeah, for sure. And then my other note was under agency, that's any entity. It's not like a government agency. It could be a nonprofit, it could be a landowner. Like, would you just write landowner or something for that, or private land?
Yeah, private landowner. We're just trying to capture where our data is coming from. So this doesn't mean just Forest Service. It could be the collaborative name, just whatever you're kind of doing the work under would be really helpful to know.
Okay. Awesome. And then we have 2 hands raised. I think Steve was the first hand. If you want to go ahead, Steve.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Cool, Steve Orr with Boulder Fire. This is great, I like it. Could we use the Survey123 mobile app, and then in terms of submitting a polygon, we could walk the area? And I haven't used Survey a ton. I've used Collector a lot more, which I guess is field maps. but is that potentially an option? Just to give you a little better or whatever, better shapefile or better polygon.
Okay, so I've never used it in the field. I know we have technicians that do. That spits out a shapefile in the end, correct? Like it's shaped like I don't know what the
I've used Collector, which is now called Field Maps, a lot more. I think Survey is more forms based, so I don't know that is an option, but I was just curious if that's an option.
Yeah, Steve, this is Nick. I'm on here. No one was in my
Yeah,
room
cool.
after a while. So I built this to be more of like a drawing tool, and I don't think you could take this offline and use any sort of GPS in your device. But I mean, certainly you could build a field map and collect it that way. But yeah, we'll use field maps for drawing the spatial data on foot, and then we'll use Survey 123 mostly for just point data.
Yep, cool. All right, awesome. Yeah, no, this is a great tool. I think it's going to work really well. I appreciate it.
Great.
Awesome. And then Courtney has her hand raised next.
Thank you so much for having so many options for people with different technical abilities. I help to run a grant program, and some of our grantees are really tiny, like HOAs or nonprofits with very little skill or like capacity to gain the skill. I'm picturing one group in particular that does forest thinning around homes in their neighborhood. And so they'll have maybe like 15 small polygons within the same area. And I'm just trying to figure out which tool I would direct them to. This would be one polygon at a time, right? There's no way to have multiple polygons. So maybe it's option number 3.
Yeah.
Oh, are you showing me multiple polygons?
Yeah, unfortunately you can only do one at a time, which
okay. So maybe it would be option number 3. They could work with someone to get, 5 polygons that are all the exact same prescription, and they're probably within 10 miles of each other. I'm actually not sure if you'd want that to be considered one project or 2 projects. I guess maybe that's too specific for right now.
if it's a multi-part polygon, but they were all the exact same, or have the same name, the same funding, the same treatment, it would be, it really wouldn't matter if it was uploaded as 1 or 2, so you could do that. But yeah, if it's too hard for them to individually draw all these, it's definitely something one of us could walk through on kind of do the same thing, but on a GIS map, so that we can keep all those polygons.
Okay, well, that's helpful. I'll talk to them to see what they think their capacity is in terms of entering this a few times.
That's a really good question. Is it Deanna has a hand up?
Hi, it's actually Dina Harms. So I'm with BLM Southwest District, and I do part of my job is mitigation stuff under the fuels and fire. I just wanted to ask you guys, because I don't know if we have someone in our BLM Colorado State office that now does GIS for fuels. And are you guys connected with her? It's Lindy Jacks by any chance?
Just had a call with her last week.
Okay, perfect. All right. So is she getting you all the information?
Yeah, we're going to connect with BLM, and they'll use a different method, but yeah, we have been connected. The BLM has been actually really great at volunteering their data quite quickly. So
good. And then did she mention that she would be getting our community assistance? So we have community assistance agreements with West Region Wildfire Council, which is how I got connected to this call. And then we have 3 down in like the southern area near Durango. So, but there's quite a few across the state. and they do mitigation work. So did she mention that? I know on our district, my supervisor actually takes those shape files of completed work and gives them to her.
Is that uploaded into any one of their databases?
It would be, so we upload the shape, so we asked for shape files from our recipients, and then it's uploaded into our database. So maybe that's a question on my end to find out if she's doing that too.
Yeah, so it's like private lands.
It's on private land. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or would you rather have, you know, those folks that are already doing, like West Region does a lot with a lot of different funds and stuff. So yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what the best way of getting you data.
Yeah, I think if it's all coming through BLM, Lindy might be the best person to kind of organize different kinds.
Okay.
Since they're already working to get all that data together, so we're not double crossing or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So yeah, this is great. So thank you.
Great, good information. Thank you. Steve, did you have another question?
That's negative. I may have hit that accidentally.
Okay.
I left my hand up. Lowering.
Yeah, I guess that's all I have. Maybe we get a little extra break. But yeah, please reach out to us if or have your partners reach out if even this option is not going to work, because we would like to get as much data. And kind of, you brought up some of these private landowners, and we'll never put like their names in here or their contact information. I mean, they'll have, we'll just put it as private as the landowner, there won't be like a name attached to that. So you don't have to worry about, at least if they're interested in contributing, you don't have to worry about privacy concerns. So, all right, looks like we're headed back. So thank you. Please reach out if you have any questions.